There comes a moment in a woman's life when the strength she once wore like armor begins to feel more like a weight she can't set down. She didn't choose to be the strong one. Life chose that role for her. Life handed her responsibilities too heavy, expectations too high, burdens no one else wanted to hold. And somewhere in the middle of surviving, she became the one everyone relied on. She was the one who stayed calm when everything was falling apart, the one who comforted others, even when she had no one to comfort her, the one who held the family together, held the friendships together, held herself together, even on nights when she cried quietly into her pillow, so no one would worry. People admired her strength. Without ever noticing the exhaustion behind it, they praised her resilience. Without seeing the loneliness that came with it, they leaned on her. Without ever asking what it cost her to be the person who never fell apart. She became the safe place for everyone else. Yet she had nowhere to collapse herself. She was the solution to others' chaos. Yet she carried her own storms in silence. She was the light that guided everyone. Yet she walked through her own shadows alone. But one day, a quiet day, an ordinary day, she felt something inside her shift. Not a breakdown, not a failure, just a deep, honest realization that she was tired. Tired of being the emotional anchor. Tired of being the healer. Tired of pretending she was fine. When her soul whispered for rest, for the first time, she asked herself a question she had avoided for years. What if I'm allowed to stop being the strong one? The question itself felt like a crack in her armor. A soft, fragile opening that let the truth finally breathe. Strength isn't supposed to be a cage, and she was never meant to carry everything alone. If you've ever felt this, the quiet weight of being everyone's strength while your own heart trembles, then stay. This video is for you, and if these words are already touching a place you rarely let others see, consider subscribing, not out of obligation, but because you deserve a corner of the world where your soul feels understood. Now, let's talk about what happens when a woman finally stops trying to be the strong one. Long before she became the strong one, she was simply a woman, trying to make it through life the best way she knew how. But over time, people began handing her their problems, their fears, their insecurities, as if she were built to carry what was too heavy for them. At first, she didn't mind. She cared deeply. She wanted to help. She believed that loving people meant lifting their burdens and absorbing their pain. And because she was reliable, steady, intuitive, the world around her started treating her like she was unbreakable. She was the one who picked up the pieces when others fell apart, the one who offered reassurance when someone needed comfort, the one who listened for hours, even when no one ever asked how she was doing, the one who held the emotional climate of her relationships on her own shoulders. And people grew accustomed to this. They came to expect it. Her strength became so normal that no one questioned it anymore. No one wondered if she needed rest or support or space to feel her own emotions. Being strong became her identity, not because it reflected her truth, but because it protected everyone else. And somewhere along the way, she forgot how to ask for help. She forgot what it felt like to lean on someone. She forgot the softness that comes from being held instead of holding. She forgot that she had needs too, because she spent so many years burying them beneath the needs of everyone around her. Her strength became a mask that even she couldn't take off. A mask that said, "I'm fine. I can handle it. I don't need anything." But the truth? She wasn't fine. She wasn't meant to handle everything, and she did need something. She needed someone to notice the weight she carried even when she didn't speak it. The exhaustion didn't come from being strong. It came from being strong alone. From always being the healer, never the healed, the listener, never the heard, the anchor, never the one anchored. And deep down, beneath all the layers of resilience and responsibility, her soul whispered the truth she had silenced for far too long. "I'm tired." That whisper was the first sign that the armor she wore so well was becoming too heavy to keep carrying. For most of her life, she believed that strength was her greatest quality, a gift, a duty, almost a calling. But she didn't realize that the world around her had quietly turned that strength into an expectation she could never step away from. People came to her not because they cared for her, but because they trusted she could handle anything. They confided in her because she listened deeply, not because they ever intended to offer the same comfort in return. They leaned on her because leaning on her was easy, not because they wondered whether she had anything left to give. Her strength became the foundation upon which everyone else built their certainty. It became convenient for others, too convenient. And slowly, the line between being strong and being responsible for everything began to blur. She could feel it in the way people spoke to her, in the way they brought their chaos to her feet, expecting her to sort it out. She felt it in the loneliness that followed every crisis, how she would comfort others through the night, and then cry alone in silence when the weight of their problems settled in her chest. Her strength no longer felt like a virtue. It felt like captivity. It dictated the way she behaved, the way she showed up, the way she interacted with the world. Even when she was hurting, she played the role others expected, the steady one, the calm one, the woman who never breaks. But inside, she was fracturing. Inside, she was longing for a moment where she didn't have to be the one holding everything together, where she didn't have to be the protector, the rescuer, the emotional guardrail everyone leaned against. She began to realize that the armor she wore so faithfully was no longer protecting her. It was trapping her. She couldn't show vulnerability without feeling guilty. She couldn't express exhaustion without worrying that someone would be disappointed. She couldn't admit she was struggling without fearing that people would pull away because she no longer served the role they needed her to fill. Her identity became fused with strength, to the point that she didn't know where the role ended and where she began. And the truth she had avoided finally made its way into her awareness. She was allowed to be human, allowed to feel, allowed to need, allowed to break, to rest, to let go. Strength was never supposed to be a cage. But somewhere along the way, the world placed her inside one and called it admiration. The day she recognized this, really recognized it, something within her began to crack open, not in despair, but in quiet liberation. Her breaking point didn't arrive loudly. There was no explosion, no dramatic collapse, no moment that others would look at and say, "That's when she couldn't take it anymore." Instead, it came softly, in an exhaustion she couldn't shake, in mornings that felt heavier than they should, in conversations where she nodded along, even though her soul felt absent. It came in the quiet moments when no one else was watching, when she finally allowed herself to feel just how much she had been carrying. It happened on days that looked ordinary, a day when she couldn't force a smile, a day when a simple task felt overwhelming, a day when a message went unanswered because she didn't have the strength to be the comforting voice she always was, a day when she sat on the edge of her bed and felt tears rise without knowing exactly why. That was the moment she realized her body and soul were begging her to stop. She wasn't breaking down, she was breaking free from a role she never chose. Her strength had always been admired, but her pain had always been invisible. She carried storms within her, while everyone else praised her sunshine. She gave more comfort than she ever received. She held more than anyone ever knew. And she did it all quietly, because she believed that collapsing was not an option for people like her. But on that quiet day, she felt the truth rise in her chest, like a confession she could no longer swallow. I can't keep holding everything, not because she was weak, but because she was human, because she had gone far too long, without a place to rest, without a space to be soft, without someone to say, "You don't have to be strong all the time." She realized that her body was tired, her heart was tired, her mind was tired from carrying years of emotions that she never allowed herself to feel. It wasn't burnout. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't a failure. It was her soul demanding honesty. It was the moment she finally understood that the strongest women are often the ones who suffer silently, not because they want to, but because they don't know another way. And in that quiet breaking point, a new possibility appeared, that maybe she didn't have to break to rest. Maybe she didn't have to collapse to be held. Maybe she didn't have to be the strong one to be loved. It was the beginning of her letting go. The day she finally stopped trying to be the strong one didn't look like surrender. It looked like awakening. She didn't shout her truth. She didn't announce it to anyone. She didn't warn people that she was no longer available to carry their storms or fix the things they broke. It was quieter than that, a shift so subtle that only she could feel it. It began with a single decision: to stop holding everything alone. She allowed herself to say, "I'm tired," without following it with an apology. She allowed herself to say, "I need help," without feeling ashamed. She allowed herself to feel sad, without forcing herself to be the comforter. She allowed herself to rest, without earning it first. Through endless giving, for the first time, she gave herself permission to be soft, to be the version of herself she had kept buried beneath responsibility, expectation, and the fear of disappointing others. She realized that her strength was never meant to be constant. It was meant to ebb and flow, like everything human. But she had been living in survival strength for so long. That softness felt foreign, like a luxury she wasn't allowed to have. But as she leaned into it, as she allowed moments of stillness, as she let herself cry without hiding, as she stopped pretending, she was invincible. Something miraculous happened. She felt lighter, not because life became easier, but because she stopped carrying it the wrong way. She stopped absorbing emotions that didn't belong to her. She stopped overfunctioning in relationships that asked too much. She stopped taking responsibility for the healing of others while neglecting her own. She discovered that strength without softness is just exhaustion dressed as resilience, that being strong doesn't mean being silent, that being dependable doesn't mean being depleted, that being the one people rely on should never mean losing herself. And in choosing softness, she discovered a truth that changed her life. Real strength is knowing when to let go, when to stop holding everything, when to choose rest over endurance, when to choose peace over pride, when to choose herself over the version of her the world demanded. And in that quiet moment of choice, the day she embraced her softness without shame, her soul finally exhaled. There comes a moment in a woman's life when she realizes that being strong is not the same as being whole, that holding everything together is not the same as being at peace, that carrying everyone else's emotions is not the same as being loved. And when she reaches that moment, when she feels the ache in her bones, from years of being the one who never breaks, she discovers a truth that changes her from the inside out. She was never meant to hold the world alone. She was never meant to swallow her pain so others could stay comfortable. She was never meant to heal others while abandoning herself. She was never meant to live behind armor that no one ever helped her take off. And as she lets go of that impossible expectation, as she stops trying to be the strong one every minute of every day, her life begins to shift. In small, quiet, powerful ways. Her breathing becomes softer, her mornings become gentler, her heart feels less like a battlefield and more like a home. She starts recognizing moments of joy that were once drowned in responsibility. She starts noticing the peace that comes from silence. That isn't heavy anymore. She starts meeting herself with the tenderness she once reserved only for others, and she realizes, sometimes with tears, sometimes with relief, always with truth, that she deserves softness just as much as anyone she has ever cared for. If you've felt this shift, if you've listened to these words and recognized pieces of yourself in the weight she carried and the weight she released, I want you to know this. You are not weak for wanting rest. You are not selfish for wanting support. You are not dramatic for feeling deeply. You are not failing for finally putting the weight down. You are human. You are healing. You are becoming whole. In a way that pretending to be strong never allowed. And if these words met you in a place you rarely let others see, if they made you feel understood, less alone, or simply held for a moment, consider subscribing, not as a favor to this channel, but as an act of kindness toward yourself, so that when life becomes heavy again, you always have a place to return to, a voice that reminds you that you don't have to carry everything to be worthy of love. You are allowed to stop being the strong one, and your soul has waited a long time to hear that truth.